Okay, so for this first match, I wanted to start by showing you what this deck is capable of with one of its better draws. There's not a ton of things to learn, I think, maybe from these games for this first match, but I wanted to start by just showing you, okay, this is what the deck does when everything's working the way it's supposed to. So we keep this hand, it's one of our best hands. We start with opening hand actions, pair of ley lines. We want to always dump them both, like all your ley lines onto the board on the first turn because of devotion. Opponents coming out with a pretty fast affinity start though. It's going to be tough to keep up with. Oh, that was a good draw. So hold on. So what we did there, we drew a plains. We searched out Nykthos because the opponent has 2 lands and we just had the 1 because we started off with just Wayfarer. We were on the draw this game. So the opponent started out with a Vault Scourge, and then we played a Wayfarer after we had our 2 ley lines. Now on turn 2, they played Master, and we just searched out a Nykthos, and then played the plains we drew and played Wayfarer. So now we have a Nykthos in hand, ready to go. We have a pair of Wayfarers and 2 ley lines. The opponent plays Cranial Plating, hooks it up to the Scourge, as you would expect, and attacks us for 12 on turn 3. And we've already taken 2 points from the Scourge when they attacked with it on turn 2. So we're about to go down to 6 life on turn 3. And which means they're basically going to have 2 lethal attackers the following turn. And what are we going to do on our turn 3 to deal with this? Well, fortunately, we have an answer to that. We play Nykthos, and we tap it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 devotion. That's why we didn't trump block, just went to 6. And cast our turn 3 Elspeth. Then guess what we're going to do with our Elspeth? Yeah, that's right. We minus Elspeth to kill both their creatures. And then might as well attack because, well, they don't have any haste creatures. No need to try to protect Elspeth. And the opponent's just like, that's it. I'm done. I thought my good turn 3 put you to 6 life, threaten 2 lethal attackers was going to be good. Nope. Turn 3 Elspeth. Can't beat that. So I think that was a little premature concession of the opponent there. I think that, if they draw back-to-back, I guess they can't Galvanic Blast us because we have Leyline, so they have to mount an attack. And I don't think it's going to work because we're about to cast Ballista for 4 counters because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 devotion. So we could just we could even play out the Knight if we draw a land. Yeah, we're basically just going to play Ballista for 4 next turn, so any kind of offense the opponent's trying to make happen is just not going to happen. So yeah, that was probably our best draw. So for sideboard for Affinity, you basically want to take out the Nevermores. You want to bring in the Wrath of Gods, and you also want to. You can look at the sideboard notes for the matches. I wrote them all down, but you basically want to bring in removal spells, and you want to take out cards that aren't removal spells. So Leyline has some utility, like they can't Galv Blast us, stuff like that, but it's not good enough to play post board. It obviously did work that game, just increasing our devotion. But in general, we want to bring in more removal spells and take out the cards that are less effective. So Leylines, Nevermores come out, bring in like Wraths and other removal spells. I actually brought in a Devout Lightcaster just because I thought it was a little more effective than our next best card in the main deck. It's not super good in this matchup, but it has some utility. It can kill like a Vault Scourge, and that's about it. But it also increases our devotion by 3. So game 2, we did draw the 1 Lightcaster that we boarded in, but that's okay. We have a reasonable draw. We can play turn 1 Border Post, turn 2 probably Ballista, kill whatever sort of signal past Vault Scourge they play, and then maybe we play Lightcaster if they happen to draw a Vault Scourge. Then Gideon maybe can start getting things going. Not a great draw, certainly not compared to last game, but it has enough going for it that we don't mulligan. And they do have a pretty aggressive start with 1 toughness creatures. So the first Ballista will probably kill the Pest, which we do just to save time. We actually get a chump block in first. It's the same amount of damage. If I killed it pre-combat, the Signal Pest, then they would attack me for 1 with the Memnite, but instead I wait for combat, and I just chump block the Memnite, and then sack to kill the Pest, and I take 1 from the Ornithopter, so it's essentially the exact same thing. And then they play Etch Champion. Okay, well, we play another Border Post. And then I chose to play the Ballista here, because I was doing the math, and it's like, well, I'm going to take a ton of damage if I don't play the Ballista, and if anything were to go wrong, like with the Wrath plan, well, I basically want to just absorb as much damage as possible. And I feel like I might also encourage the opponent to overcommit, because I'm threatening just playing land and adding a counter to Ballista and potentially like killing multiple things. And if the opponent activates the Ink Moth Nexus or the Blink Moth Nexus this turn, then I wanted to kill that so I can untap and Wrath. Is I don't know, like playing the Ballista here, it's close. That was a big decision this game, but I chose to do it to absorb some damage. And then they put the cranial plating on the champion instead of the Ornithopter, which is a little surprising to me because that allows me to just get in a good chump block instead of taking damage from the flyer. But that's what they did. And I do chump block, and then I sack to hit the Ravager. And I'm assuming they're going to sack an Ornithopter or a Memnite, probably the Memnite, just to save the Ravager. Instead, they let the Ravager die and put the counters on the Ornithopter because they just wanted to get a flying dude with a bonus. I was hoping they would sack a Darksteel Citadel, but weren't that fortunate. So this turn, pretty obvious what our play is. Just Wrath you, leave you with 1 card in hand, but you have a plating. And up, that was the good last threat, the one we wanted you to have. The one we can Lightcaster. So we Lightcaster the Vault Scourge. Then they play an Etch Champion. Okay. Well, that one's a little tough because we used both our Ballistas. But we can get rid of the Cranial Plating and still play the Gideon. So look at how much devotion we had that turn. So we activated the Nykthos after playing the Lightcaster. This is how much devotion the Lightcaster gives us. It gives us 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we tap the 2 Border Posts, 7, 8 mana. Is that right? 8 mana? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 5. Sorry, the O-ring isn't in play yet. So we got 5. No, that's right. 3, 4, 5, 6. So we had 6 devotion. Oh, we played the Border Post. That's right. That was what one of it is. And so then we got 7 mana to cast Gideon and O-ring in the same turn, which is pretty insane off of this many lands this early. But then we have active Gideon, we get rid of the plating, so now the champion is a much smaller problem, much more manageable, and they get a hit in, can't block it. Gideon goes to 1 and make it a creature attack. Not really a lot going on at this point. They're finishing off Gideon. There's a Ballista. It was a close game, not anymore. It's colorless, can block the Etch Champion, can pling off any sort of creature they play at this point, and we just basically completely dominate at this point. Yeah, so there's basically an interesting decision with playing the second Ballista. It could have been wrong, but I ended up absorbing 9 points of damage or whatever by doing it. I think they should have just put the cranial plating on the Ornithopter. I think we're but still, like, we'd be at 7 or whatever instead of 14. But yeah, this match, my draws ended up being pretty good. This matchup is probably a little bit closer than than it looked in these 2 games. But yeah, this deck, this is kind of an example of what this is capable of when you get the good draws. And one of the things I look for in a modern deck isn't just how consistent is it, but how good are its high-end draws, and how do those compete against the decent to good draws against other modern decks. And as you can see, our opponent had some pretty good affinity draws. It's like they weren't missing anything. They had all the stuff they wanted to do and put us under a ton of pressure, but our good draws just dominated them. So that's one of the things I look for, is having a deck that can compete with tier 1 strategies when it has its good draws. And now let's see some of the matches where we have more medium level draws against tier 1 strategies.